So this is a presentation about building the superworker company. But before I start, I want to read you something that I just got 2 minutes ago while I was sitting in the back. IBM Chief Executive Arvind Krishna today said the tech giant had used AI and AI agents to replace the work of hundreds of HR workers. As a result, they're laying these people off. It has hired more programmers than salespeople, and of course the IBM stock went up. So what does that say about HR? We need to move faster, guys. We don't have a lot of time. This stuff is more powerful and more useful than you realized, and so for the next 30 minutes, I want to give you a little motivation, a little bit of an incentive, and sort of a little roadmap of what you can do to create what we call the superworker organization. Now, we wrote this report last fall, and the idea behind it is pretty simple. When AI catches hold, and it is catching hold now, this is not something we're waiting for, this is happening, the productivity and the effectiveness of each individual goes up by orders of magnitude. You either reduce the number of people for the same amount of revenue and profit, or you keep the same number of people and you generate a higher revenue and profit. And that's what CEOs are saying. CEOs have basically voted with their pocketbooks. The budgets for AI or IT in general went up 62% this year to buy AI tools, things like Eightfold and other systems like this. And the expectations from the CEO and the CFO are we're going to reduce the number of people, increase the revenue, increase the profitability, improve the customer service, and you guys get to figure out how to do that. So that's kind of where we landed. Now, in the middle of that, of course, there's constant change of the AI technology market, but there's also some issues in the workforce itself. So I'm going to take you through what I consider to be sort of the 3 or 4 chapters of this and then finish in about 30 minutes. The first is expectations. I'm almost 70. I'm going to be 70 next year. And I've been through the mainframe to client server, the client server to the web, the web to the cloud to mobile. This one is bigger than any of the others because not only is it amazing technology, it has the sort of self-intelligent learning data integration capabilities built in that doesn't have to be done by hand. CEOs understand this. This report, which was 3,700 CEOs, so this is a large number of very senior people, 92% of them, and I'll bet it's 100% today, by the way, this is a couple months old, say that this is our future to transforming our company. They also are saying that if we don't move fast enough, we're not going to be here. So that 53% that says that their company won't exist in 10 years was 45% last year. So that number and speed of disruption is going up. The PwC research also found that the companies that are moving the fastest and disrupting themselves in the most sort of disruptive way are generating more profit than the ones that aren't. And so this whole idea that we do change over time and that we test it and we prototype it and we safely do it at the edge is being replaced by the model where we do it in the core of the business, in the front line, as fast as possible in an iterative way. And that's not something we learned about in change management. I don't know about you guys. I know there are just 2 big sessions on change management. Change management is not like that. So we're in a much, much different situation. And the CEOs are also saying, and this is absolutely true, and this gets to the issue of what I just mentioned with IBM, that adding technology to your company doesn't automatically make the company more productive or more effective. You have to change what happens under the covers. The job roles, the job titles, the business processes, the workflows. Just to give you a sense of why this internal transformation thing is so important. Last week, I think it was last week, I was in Vegas at the Unleash conference, but also at the ServiceNow conference. How many of you do business with ServiceNow? Do you know who they are? Right, you've heard of them. ServiceNow, not that long ago, was a service delivery technology for IT. And they decided they were going to be workflow management technology to redesign workflows on top of the core systems. They are now 3.5 times the market cap of Workday. Workday is growing at 10 to 15% a year. ServiceNow is growing at 30 to 40% per year. Why is that? Because all of the institutionalized processes in these ERPs are getting reinvented so fast that the ERPs can't keep up. So the bottom line on AI is this is not just about productivity and agents and digital twins and things like that. That's all great, but it's really about redesigning the way our companies work. And if you think about it that way, you're going to realize that you have a much bigger job than you thought you did in the past. Now, this is a model we came up with last year that's turning out to be very, very useful, and it's a way of thinking about where AI evolves. So the first experience we've had with AI was the chatbot, was ChatGPT. And so you're an HR manager, or you're a recruiter, or you're an L&D person, or you're an analyst. You get your own little version of Galileo or whatever tool you have, and you start using it, and your productivity goes up by 10 or 15 or 20%. That's kind of the story Microsoft's been selling with the Copilot, right? A lot of the white papers and things they write about are people, white-collar workers individually doing their jobs better. And then after you've done that for a couple of weeks or months, you realize, I can create some prompts and some automation scripts, and I can actually automate away some of the stuff that I used to do by hand. And I don't have to keep asking the AI for things. I can get the AI to do a whole string of things. If you're a software engineer, 30, 40% of the code is written by AI. Yesterday, we were talking to Ashutosh. Ashutosh thinks that the software tools are going to generate so much code that the engineers won't even know what code they developed and won't even be able to maintain it. So that's level 2. And then the performance, of course, productivity goes up higher. And that might be something as simple as scheduling a meeting or doing an interview scheduling process that takes so much time. But then you get to level 3 and you say, well, my job maybe is a sourcer, and the person next to me is the recruiter, and the person next to them is the interview scheduler, and the person next to them is the screener. Why don't we just make this one big workflow, and let's stitch these things together, because the data that started in the beginning, maybe that came from Eightfold when we were sourcing people, should be used across the whole process. And this is basically, by the way, what Eightfold has done, is do this. And let's look at it as a workflow. And now we're not looking at time to hire or time to fill. We're looking at time to productivity, time to revenue, time to profit, which is really the way we should be doing this. And maybe we don't even call it talent acquisition anymore, because talent acquisition is a part of a bigger process that's managed by this agent. That is where this is going. And then at level 4, of course, all this stuff gets more autonomous. I mean, recruiting is the perfect example for this. Of this, I know a lot of you are from talent acquisition, because recruiting has 20 or 30 or 40 steps. And at each step, you want to transfer information to the next step about what happened at the prior step, but that information isn't anywhere it's not located anywhere. What happened in the last interview? I don't know. This guy's got it written down on his notes, and maybe we'll talk about it at the next meeting. This is going to transform what we do. And the reason I sort of show you this picture is we need to think about AI in a bigger way. And that is what this is all about. This is about creating a new organization, a new function of HR. We call it systemic HR. You can call it whatever you want, where we're thinking about things more holistically. By the way, IBM, if those of you have heard Nicole Lamoureux talk about this, started this a long time ago. Diane Gerson started the AI journey at IBM before Nicole even got her job, and they have basically automated HR business partners now. Unless you're a very senior executive at IBM, you don't get a business partner. You get a chatbot that has all the information about your employees in it, and you can ask the chatbot questions, and it helps you do the things you need to do, and it recommends pay, and it recommends performance and skills upgrade, performance plans and development plans, all that. So that's really where we want to take our organizations. And the problem we have in HR, of course, is that we have our own little messes to clean up inside of HR while we're working on the rest of this for the rest of the company. Now, the reason that I think this is so transformational, and the reason this is so exciting to me, and I think it should be to you, is the functional, and we were just talking at the 3 last sessions that I was listening to were about job architecture and job design and all that. The reason we have these old job architectures is because we're still running companies like industrial companies, where we had sales, marketing, finance, business, product, engineering, research support, all these job functions in separate organizations. When you look at the org chart, or you look at the list of job titles in a large company, this automatically creates bureaucracy. We just started a project with a big advertising company, a company with 100,000 employees, big company, large ad agency. We looked at their job architecture. They have 100,000 employees. They have 65,000 job titles. The average job title has one person in it. Almost everybody has their own job title. So the HR department looks at this and says, well, basically the board went to the CEO and said, you've got to reduce the cost of this company. We're not making enough money. You're not growing fast enough. It eventually trickles down to HR. The guy who's in charge of this, very smart guy, we're going to put this podcast out pretty quick here. He buys a simple AI tool. He uses a tool like Galileo, a tool like ours. He sticks these job titles in there, runs some analysis, does some queries. He finds out actually there's only 6,000 jobs. It looks like 65,000, but they all have weird names, and 6,000 of them are the same. Then he does a second version of the analysis. He buys a tool that can break jobs into tasks. There are now AI systems that will actually crowdsource tasks within jobs for you. You don't have to do it yourself. And finds out we actually only have 600 jobs. It looked like 6,000, but 5,900 or whatever it is, 5,400 of them are actually kind of the same. So he gets down to 600. Now he goes back to the business leaders and he says, here's what I'm going to do. I want to reorganize everything this way. And they're all like, well, hold on a minute, buddy. You got to prove to me that we're going to be able to run our ad agency with only 600 job titles, because this guy's got a special job and this person's very special. And so he's in the process of sort of explaining to people how this is going to change. That is what AI is going to do. AI is going to force all of these complex, bureaucratic systems of work that we have around the company into much more streamlined processes. And that, to me, is the magic of this technology. And it's very, very exciting, because we're going to be able to run our companies much more efficiently. And the employees, the workers, all of us are going to have even more fun, because there won't be so much bureaucracy to get things done. Now, in the middle of all that, you have to cost justify the spent on something like Eightfold. You don't get to just spend a bunch of money on AI for free, because there's 100 other people that want AI too. The sales department wants it, the finance department. So you're probably somewhere near the bottom of that 62% increase in IT. So how do you cost justify this? Second thing, so I want to mention that right now. I think there is a little bit of a fleeting miscalculation of why we're doing this. The first reaction most companies have to AI is, we're going to save money. We're going to do a Elon Musk effect to the company, like IBM, and we're going to reduce the number of people. That's number one. That is a productivity increase that could improve the bottom line, but you have no competitive advantage. IBM gets a little competitive advantage out of reducing a bunch of HR people, but if they're not doing HR better, their competitors can do the same thing they can. But that's where we are with a lot of this stuff. Where the really high-performing improvements come is when you start looking at the customer experience, the product, the time to market, the speed of access to information, the quality of decisions. That's where the AI is going to add the most value. And so that's why, and I know this is normal. I mean, everybody's trying to find an ROI for all of these tools. So if you bring in Eightfold and you look at reducing the number of recruiters or reducing the cycle time or whatever it may be, that might be enough to get you most of the budget for the project, but you really need to be talking about what the folks just did a minute ago: quality of hire, time to productivity, time to results, time to outcome, better employment brand, and so forth. And that, I think, is where AI is going. Now, unfortunately, it's not that simple, because there's one little thing in the way, and that is the employees. The employees are not ready for this, and they're actually not very excited about it. I don't think the 300 or 400 people that got laid off at IBM are all excited about IBM's AI strategy today. Maybe they were yesterday. So let's look at the data on that. So surprisingly enough, this just blows my mind. This is from Gallup. I did not make this up. We are at a point right now where employee engagement is lower than it was during the pandemic. Now, there's some pretty good reasons for this. One of the reasons, it's not about managers, by the way, treating people poorly. It's basically fear. It's economic uncertainty. It's Doge, Elon Musk with, like chainsaws running across the screen. Stories about layoffs, stories about AI. People are worried. And so that's number one. Number two is trust. We are in a very strange period of time. You guys know this. You read the same news I do. It's not clear who trusts who anymore. And the level of trust that employees have in their CEOs is at a very, very low level. This is a report I read every year. You should probably look at it every year. It's very, very interesting. Edelman does a global survey of trust around the world. And usually what happens is the trust in government is the lowest. The trust in the Supreme Court is a little higher than that. The trust in the media is somewhere around the same level. And the trust in business is very high. This year, or last year, the trust in business went down about to the same level of trust we trust the political system. So for some reason, and I don't know whether it's because of the elections or because of the income inequality or because of oligarchy or whatever it is that your politics may be, people are not sure they trust their business leaders. And that, of course, falls into our laps because we're in many ways responsible for the communication of that. And there's even more concern going on. People of the younger folks are basically finding they can't find jobs. There aren't as many entry-level jobs. There is a white-collar recession, even though the blue-collar roles are very hard to fill, and the healthcare jobs are very hard to fill, and the unemployment rate is low. Unemployment amongst those at our level and our kinds of jobs is actually pretty high. I mean, most of you, if you lost your job in HR, would probably have a little bit of a struggle finding another one, given this cycle we're going through right now, and people feel that. Now, if you read these statistics, these are kind of scary. I mean, the one that scared me the most was the blue box over there, that 2/3 of Gen Z workers don't even think their college degree is even worth it anymore because they're learning so much from AI. Now, I told some folks this at dinner last night, and they were kind of taking notes. I think this is just a reality that this technology has really changed the types of skills and the nature of skills we want. If you look at what Eightfold does, or a lot of the skills-based organizations, skills-based hiring, all these white papers that have come out on this, they were talking about technical skills, they were talking about science, math, software engineering. Now we're talking about actual, thinking skills of thinking about how to use the AI to do the job better. In fact, one of the CHROs I just talked to about this told me is that the skills she thinks is missing in her workforce is really complex problem solving. I mean, maybe you're a good sort of engineer and you know how to do your technical job, but do you know how to think bigger about the problem and use the AI to solve an even bigger problem than before? And that's not the same job as being really good at the technical work you did before. So this idea of what is a really valuable skill is changing too. And then, of course, there's the issue that people don't want to work for a company that isn't helping them stay ahead of their career. So if somebody goes to work for New York Life, I heard them talk earlier, and New York Life is not teaching them how to use AI in their jobs, they're going to scratch their head and say, I don't think I want this place because it's not going to be good for my career, so I want the company to help me. Again, this also falls into our laps because we have to build the AI literacy, we have to give people exposure, we have to give them the opportunities, give them the chance to develop themselves and learn so that they can fulfill these desires, and then they feel the flexibility to change jobs, change roles, do all these new things that we're likely to ask them to do as the organization changes. So this is kind of what we're dealing with. The third issue is the market. Now, I've been involved in HR tech for a long time, and I know a lot of the vendors and have worked with many, many of them over the years. And usually what happens in technology is there's a couple of years of new things like mobile and cloud, and there's a few leading vendors, And then there's this slow evolution where you look around and you see what other companies are doing, and your company decides, a year or two into the wave, okay, we're ready to go. We think the market's mature enough. This one is moving way faster. And it's moving so fast that the vendors themselves are getting disrupted even faster than they realized. This shows you the level of technology you already have in your company, and I don't know that you're all at that level, but most companies have lots and lots of tools. Now, everybody's building agents. Now, most of the eightfold panels out there, are labeled agents. What is an agent? By the way, 6 months ago or a year ago, we didn't even know we never used the word, right? So what an agent really is it's a modular AI application that is smart enough to use the data and processing and workflow to automate the thing that it's designed to do. You could think of a multifunctional agent, like I said before, like an end-to-end recruiting agent that does everything, a talent intelligence agent, a selection agent, or all these other agents. And I guarantee you there are probably 20 startups working on each one of these little boxes right now. And most of them are using a multi-billion-dollar AI engine they got from either ChatGPT, Google, or Anthropic. They don't have to build their own AI. They don't have to develop the AI. All they have to do is figure out how to use it and turn it into an application. This is a very disruptive period of time for vendors. If you're Workday, if you're Oracle, if you're SAP, if you're or UKG, I know there's a couple folks here from UKG, you look at the 20, 30 years of man efforts and engineering research you put into your system, and 3 guys come along and build this agent, and all of a sudden this agent is faster and better at doing some of the workflows that you designed in your core system. You scratch your head and you think, what are we going to do about this? Workday woke up one day and said, well, maybe we better open up Workday and have a bunch of partners. Have you noticed how Workday has suddenly become very partner-friendly? And they created this thing called the Workday Agent System of Record. They're trying to prevent all these agents from taking away Workday and doing the work, away from them so they can keep them into the Workday family. So that's a problem. Now, for those of you that are selecting technology, a lot of you have obviously selected Eightfold. Eightfold is a very, very solid, well-run, successful company. In the early days of this, Eightfold probably knows more about AI than many of the vendors in the space added up together. But it's going to be complex and it's going to be noisy. And what's going to happen is this stack of stuff that we've always thought as a layer cake. I mean, this kind of chart has been around forever and ever and ever and ever. Is going to get decomposed. It's going to look more like this. There's going to be agents on top of it, and then there's going to be agents inside of it. These are going to be agents, and these are going to be agents. And talent and intelligence is still going to be there. I think Eightfold's fine because you're still going to need some sort of a data infrastructure underneath it. But a lot of these functional apps are going to be tough. There's I won't get into vendor names, but I know some of these new recruiting agents that can do end-to-end recruiting. They're going to just replace ATSs, just like I know Eightfold is doing the same thing. So that's sort of the third piece of this. And then there's one more step, and that is, I think, personally, that we're all going to have LLMs on our bodies or in our phones or on our computers or in our glasses. So this is going to be a 2-tier architecture. We're going to have all this AI in the HR domain, in the AI infrastructure, and every employee is going to have their own local AI with whatever tool your company standardizes on. A lot of it will be the Microsoft Copilot, and that AI is going to be communicating with all the rest of these AIs. So that's kind of the third challenge, which means that you're going to be asked to manage these things. And the HR departments are sometimes getting involved in this, but certainly the IT departments are. If we're going to have 20, 30, 40, 50 agents, and employees are going to build their own agents, we need to know where the data is going, who's getting what data, how do we secure the data, who's responsible for the data that comes from here and goes there, and all of these other issues. So we are in the middle of a very fascinating, exciting, transformational, emerging market of technology. Okay, so the last thing. Given the business pressures you're getting from the top, given the employee pressures you're getting from the workforce, given the market pressures you're getting from the HR tech market, what do? We, and I mean we in HR, this is where we thrive. We need to figure out how to redesign the company one step at a time to get to where we want to go. It's not going to happen all at once. And by the way, we're not going to be involved in every one of these projects. The sales guys, the marketing guys, the finance guys, they're going to do it on their own. There's probably an AI steering committee, but we're going to have to be involved in this because ultimately this is about change, reskilling, rethinking jobs, rethinking pay, rethinking skills, and rethinking recruiting. And that's really what I'm going to talk about next. Ideally, the way I think business people think about this, and this is a chart I have used many years in the past for many, many reasons, is that the reason companies tend to get freaked out about AI is they find themselves on this black line. One of the companies we're working with right now is a very successful software company, multi-billion-dollar market cap, but their growth has slowed. And they woke up in the last year and saw all the AI competitors competing with them in their market. And they said, you know, we got to figure out what to do around here. We need to be more innovative. We need to reduce the number of people. We need to be more productive. We need to improve sales. We need to get more, essentially more super worker-ish. And you know what they're struggling with? Nobody wants to change their jobs. This is a company that was very successful for many years. The culture is one of being very respectful, very honorable. Nobody is there's no arguing, there's no debating. It's very compliant because they did so well for so many years. Most of the people who founded the company are still there. They're still doing the same jobs they did before. Somebody's going to have to shake them by the shoulders and figure out what's next. And the new CHRO is grappling with this. It's a really, really tough job. I just had a call last week with Unilever who's going through the same thing. Unilever, because they're going through one of these transformations themselves, basically came to the conclusion is that we need to, what they call, hold the tension. We need to be tougher on each other. We need to be debating things more. We need to be discussing things more so that we can make these transformations and not be nice to everybody all the time and prevent these changes from happening. Now, if you don't believe that this is the right thing to do, let me show you two pieces of research. This is going back to the PwC study. I love that they did this because this is completely consistent with the research we did. They took these 4,700 companies that did the CEO survey, and they asked the CEOs, what percentage of your workers change jobs in a given year? And they grouped them into 4 categories, and they found out that the companies on the right that change jobs the most are 27% more profitable than the ones on the left, essentially proving what we also proved, which is the better you are at change, the more money you're going to make and more successful you're going to be. So change ability, change agility, change is a skill. In fact, the report that we just released today, which we built with Eightfold, by the way, as part of our partnership with Eightfold, is about the insurance industry. And I saw, New York Life Club here just a minute ago. The insurance industry is going through this as well. 50% of the people in the insurance industry work in sales. I don't know if you know that. They don't have very many actuaries. It's actually a pretty small number of people. But the companies that are thriving the most in insurance are the ones that are changing the fastest and have the biggest culture of change. So that's kind of where this is landing. And we also discovered when we did this research that change isn't a simple equation. You have to develop a meritocracy. You have to focus on expertise. You have to reward people. You have to facilitate change. And you need to focus on what we call talent density. Talent density is the idea that every time we make a move or a promotion or a reskilling or an organizational change, we need to do it in the context of improving the skills and capability of the function as a group, not rewarding an individual as alone. I can see I'm out of time because somebody's about to come walking up here. So let me wrap up. Relative to talent acquisition, it's going to affect a lot of things. If we do go into a recession, if we do go into a market where companies are starting to do more downsizing, You're going to think about talent acquisition not as a collection and recruiting function, but as a growth function. Because a lot of the growth in a company that's a superworker company comes from internal mobility, it comes from reskilling, it comes from the stuff that Eightfold shows you, where you have capabilities to grow without necessarily hiring. And that is another, sort of systemic HR issue that I think is going to be part of this. So let me wrap up with this. The superworker organization is coming. The CEOs and the CFOs are going to make it happen. We have to be a part of this. We don't have a lot of time to decide when we feel that we are ready. We have to be, kind of jump on the bandwagon with them. We need to learn and experiment and facilitate the literacy with AI. I just read a report by Adecco this morning that said that 60 to 65% of companies feel that they have no AI literacy in their management teams, by the way. Forget about the rest of the employees. So we need to do that. We need to partner with IT, because the IT teams are just as confused about this stuff as you guys are, and they're trying to build, standards and tools around it. We need to find the business use cases, so we're not just working on productivity, we're working on, improved customer experience, improved output, improved profitability, and we need to really get comfortable with this redesign and reassembly of jobs around these new multifunctional systems. It's a really fun and exciting time, and I know that we're all going to make it through this, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective on why this industry is so interesting right now, and why Eightfold in particular is such a strategic vendor to help you go through this journey. Okay, there you go. Thank you.